Hey guys, it's Rahim. Welcome back here. So in today's video, I'm going to share with you how to compare a buy-to-let property that you want to rent out to a family versus looking at renting the property on a nightly basis as an Airbnb. So my investor presented this opportunity to me to help him analyze what decision we need to take. Are we going to be renting the property to a family, or we want to rent it as a serviced accommodation? So that's the analysis I'm going to be doing here. So I'd like you to watch it keenly so you can know how to analyze your properties, because the figures and the returns is what makes you make that decision to use whatever strategy you want to use. So because at the end of the day, you invest in property to make money, not to be a charity. So let's get to it. Right, okay, so we are comparing using the property as a serviced accommodation versus renting it to a family. So let's look at it first as a serviced accommodation property. So if we were to rent the property as a serviced accommodation, let me just get the postcode here. So we're gonna go to booking.com. Booking.com is one of the biggest platforms in Europe to look for how much people are willing to pay for nightly rates, and also how much people are renting their properties, similar property to yours, on a nightly basis, to determine how much we may be able to charge per night for our property. So the property that we're analyzing is in Leeds. So I'll put the postcode there. Okay, and then I'm gonna select the date of when we are traveling. So we're pretending like we're traveling, aren't we? We're going as a guest to see how much we may be able to charge for the property. So when you're doing this, you want to do maybe 2 weeks in advance, or maybe 3 weeks in advance, for you to get the kind of figures you're looking at, so it doesn't get overestimated. Because if you do sooner, the figures tend to be higher. Later you do, the less the nightly rates are, because you want to capture those nightly rates, not the ones that are recent. Okay, so and also when you're looking at the nightly rate, you don't want to do the weekends as well, because weekends tend to be higher as well. The weekends for serviced accommodation or Airbnb properties is Thursday, Friday and Saturday, because that's when people are going on for weekend, especially Friday and Saturday. Sunday is like a weekday, so you can use Sunday as well, but I like to use Monday, Tuesday, or Tuesday, Wednesday. So in this example, we're going to do 2 weeks time. And also when you're choosing the dates, you need to make sure it doesn't involve a holiday or a bank holiday. Okay, so as you can see here, you're going to do that there. I'm going to do 2 weeks. So 2 weeks is the 26th, and in 2 weeks time, and that. So you see, I've chosen the 26th and the 27th. This is about 2 weeks from the day I'm analyzing the deal. Well, slightly over 2 weeks to be fair, but that's what you want to do. And also the number of people are staying in your property should be based on the number of bedrooms you have in the property. So this property is a 3-bedroom house, so we're gonna say it's 3 adult and 3 rooms, because you want to know how much you can charge for the minimum amount of people that will stay in your property per night. So in this example, because it's a 3-bed, we do 3 bedrooms. If it's 2 beds, you also do 2 beds. If it's 1 bed, you also do 1 bed. So basically the number of people should be based on the number of rooms you have. Okay, moving on then. So what you now do, this property we have here is a house, not an apartment, so we want to filter it to houses. Okay, so you're going to filter that to houses, and then this thing brings up all the houses in that specific area, and then this then helps us understand what the nightly rates are. So you can see a 3-bedroom house here, just 700 yards, so it's going for 266, and they got a 2-bedroom here, 154, and another 3-bedroom here going for 174, 2-bedroom 200, 3-bedroom 261, and then we're going to stop up to 3 miles, because we don't want to go too far, because if we go too far, we may be going to a different area that maybe charges more or less, and then that kind of derail us from what we want to be looking at. So maximum is 174, 3 miles away. So we now know we can charge anywhere between 200 to 261. Okay, 261 for the 3-bedrooms house. You can see the 2 beds are going cheaper, but what I tend to do, especially when you own the property, I like to go for the lowest rate possible, just to see if I'm making money at that point. So what we're going to do with this example, we're going to estimate it to be £150, not £174, not the £266, and not the £200. We want to go lower to see how we are with our profit margin. So we know that's how much we're charging. So we're going to go to our deal analyzer, and then we're going to put that figure here. So we're going to put the figure as 150 times 365 days of the year times your occupancy rate, which is the 45%. So I like to start with 50% occupancy rate. This is to say, if I rent the property 50% of the time during the year, am I still making profit? Because at the end of the day, you want to be making profit at that point before you even make the decision to use the property as a serviced accommodation. So moving on then, so with this investor, we are estimating that his mortgage interest payment is £442. Pardon me, it's £442. So you're going to times that by 12. And here's the thing, when you're doing serviced accommodation, all the calculations in a year is a yearly basis calculation. It's not monthly, because it's difficult for you to be able to gauge how much you're making monthly, because it fluctuates, isn't it? So you do it in an annual basis. Here's the reason why you're using the occupancy rates at the top of the menu, to ensure that those calculations are based on your occupancy rate. So obviously we have electricity to pay. Let's assume electricity to be £100 a month. And we've got gas to pay, let's say that also £100 a month, bearing that it's a 3-bedroom house. Water, let's estimate water to be £60. And then we've got council tax. Council tax, if you want to know what the council tax is, you're going to go to mycounciltax.org. So you get to that bit there, and then you put your postcode. You hit your postcode, and then you go for the property address. Their property address is 65, and then they are charging £1,377 a year for council tax. So again, bearing in mind, all the figures, all your expenses are in minuses, hence the reason why the figures are in red. Okay, you want it to be minus because you want to deduct it from your gross rental income, and you want to be deducting it from that amount, hence the reason why all these are red. So we estimate our broadband TV to be £35 a year, a month, sorry, £35 a month. That then gives you £420 a year. The cleaning, we're estimating the cleaning to be 15% of our gross rental income. Okay, for our gross rental income. And then management fees is normally 15%, but in this example, I'm going to put it as 20%, because at the end of the day, it's our property. We want to know worst case scenario. As you can see here, I'm overestimating our expenses, whilst I've just underestimated our income, because we know we can charge up to £200, aren't we? But I've underestimated that just to make sure we're on the safe netting area, making sure we're making money at that point. So I'm going to estimate our management fees, transaction cost, all that to be 20% of our gross rental income here. So, and then obviously we've got the maintenance. Let's estimate maintenance to be £50 a month. Again, that's what you're going to put aside just in case something goes wrong with the property. And then obviously you've got your TV license. TV license usually £13 a month. And insurance, obviously because you own the property, we pay insurance because we own the property, called building insurance. So let's estimate building insurance to be about £50 a month. That gives us £600. So if you add all our expenses here, all these expenses here, let me highlight it for you, that would be £21,158. That's our annual expenses if we were to rent the property and make that money there, make the £27,375. That would have been our expenses in order to be able to get that £27,375. So what we now do, we're going to minus the £21,158 from the £27,000, which is our rental income of £27,375. That gives us £6,217. So what is that £6,217? The £6,217 is our net profit after all our expenses. So what this is saying, we rent the property only 50% of the time during the year, and we deduct all our expenses from the £27,375, we're still making £6,217. This is our worst case scenario. In essence, this is at 50% occupancy rate, knowing that we've reduced our nightly rate to £150 here. So this is worst case scenario. So I'm even going to go a bit more worse as well to see what the figures are like. So if I say I only rent that property for 45% of the time, okay, 45% of the time of the year, that's how many times we have rented that property out to our guests. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm even going to make it even worse. I'm going to say, let's say we go for 35%. Okay, let me add 35% there. Okay, let me add 35%. Let's say now I added 35% here, right? That would have given us £879, which is worst case scenario. We're still making money there. Okay, so I'm gonna go back and add another rule here. If I go down here, just to make it a bit interactive. So if I add that there, if I said done, apply to all, let's say 40%. Okay, so as 40%, we're making £2,658. Normally I like to be at 50%, but I'm using 40% in this example for you to know how worse you can go, right? But 50% should be your mark. We should be making money at 50%. We should be making money at that point. So now we know how much we are making as a serviced accommodation property. Let's go back to 45% even. I'm not going to go to 50. Okay, so we're making £4,437. So here's the thing you need to know here. The money you're making at 45% here should be more or equal to when you rent it as a family let. I'll repeat. The profit you're making at 50% occupancy rate when you own the property yourself should be equal or more than your net profit for when you rent the property as a family let. Okay, so now let's move on to analyzing the family let. So now we know that's how much we're making in that property. Okay, we're gonna go now and analyze it as a family let property. So what we're not going to go again, pretend like we're gonna look for properties like that to rent as a family let. Okay, so I like to use my platform because I think that would be a lot quicker for me. Okay, so what we do here, you're gonna go paste your postcode there. Again, you can use Rightmove for this. Okay, you do not need to use Zoopla Pro here. The reason why I use Zoopla Pro is my estate agency platform is quicker for me to do it than go into Airbnb, than go into Rightmove, because I get the real data there. Okay, but you can get the same data if you go to Rightmove as well. So we're gonna search for the property. Okay, we hit search, and then obviously we're gonna filter a half, quarter, a mile first to see what we've got there. The last 12 months, and our property is a 3-bedroom house, maximum 3 bedrooms, and then it's a semi-detached. Brilliant, we've got that there, and I'm going to hit search. So when we hit search, we see what the data is. Okay, so this then tells us, right, the 14th of February, right, 3-bedroom was rented for $695. Okay, and another one was rented in 2020 for $995. So it's not enough data. So what I'm going to extend the parameter slightly, and I'm going to hit refine search, and then we're going to see if we got more data. So we can see here not a lot data here. So we're going to expand it again to 1 mile. Okay, so actually I don't like to do 1 mile because that would be going too far from the property. So what I tend to do, basically, I bring the other type of property here, because there are not lots of semi-detached houses probably in this area, so I add that there. So when I add that there, it brings me terrace houses as well. That then gives me kind of an idea of how much I may be able to rent it. So I've got 950 here, okay, 695, that's an outlier, 895, we have 950, okay. So basically it's between 895 to 950. So what I'm gonna do here, I'm gonna go for 950, right? I'm gonna go for 950 because obviously it's newly renovated house. Why am I going for 950? Just want to see what the best case is, basically, if I was to go for 950. Okay, so if I go back here, okay, I'm gonna put here 950. So 950, and we know our mortgage interest payment is £442. Okay, and insurance, we estimate that to be £50. And then we have our management fees, which is 10% of our gross rental income. And we have our maintenance, which is again 10% of our gross rental income. Okay, and then obviously we've got all these expenses here. Okay, so that meant to be 442 minus. So looking at that now, the £950, taking away our £442 interest, £50 insurance, maintenance £95, agency fees £95, we are only making £3,268 per month. Okay, that's not a lot of money to make in an investment property that you've put lots of money on. And you want that to be working a bit more harder for you. We have a rule of thumb to be making minimum of £300, but this property is only generating £265 a month, so it's not that lucrative. Therefore, that gives us £3,216. So £3,216 is what we're making if we rent the property, and fingers crossed the tenant pays us every single month without having any problem. Okay, that's what we make. Versus if we were to rent it as a serviced accommodation, we're making £4,437 at a worst case scenario. So if you look at the differences here, so if you minus this from our buy to let profit here, how much have we made? We made £1,221 more for doing the serviced accommodation. So for me then, the figures has already told me what I need to go for. Not just for the figures, by the way. This is what you want to note down. You see, when you rent a property to a family, you tend to have lots of repair and maintenance. Family, sometimes when things goes wrong, they don't tell you quickly until it becomes worse. Sometimes they will call you, tell you, oh, my cat has died, this has happened, that has happened, I'm not able to pay you rent. And obviously if they've got children, the children will be painting, doing writing in all these walls. In essence, the property would be a bit deteriorated. Whereas if you're doing a serviced accommodation, the property is not occupied all the time. Okay, and when the people occupy the property, they're not staying there for a long time as if they're renting it. And plus, they pay you before they check into your property. In essence, you get paid before they even get the keys, right? You get paid before they get the keys. And the beauty of serviced accommodation also is this, is that when they damage your property, you don't take it from your repair and maintenance. You would have saved, you would have put into your analysis or into your booking platform your damage deposit. So in essence, the guest would have paid damage deposit as well for in case they damage your property. So if they damage your property, you can claim that and fix the property. Whereas if your tenant has any repair and maintenance issue, it comes from your profit, not from their deposit. Am I making sense here? But whereas serviced accommodation, that's what it does. Basically, allows you to deduct that expense. Okay, and also you haven't problem of giving notice to tenant. You haven't got all those issues. You don't have tenants sitting on your property not paying you. You haven't got problem of them not leaving when you ask them to leave. Literally, it gives you control of your property. In essence, your property becomes like a show home instead of a rental property. So in essence, it gives you more return on your investment. So what I tend to do, what I tend to tell my investors and myself is that even if we're making the same money as if we rent the property on a service accommodation, we rather do that because of tenant problems, basically, right? Because of the tenant. If I'm making the same money as I am making when I rent a property as a family let, right, I'd rather keep it as serviced accommodation because I've got no problem tenant, I've got no issue with tenants, I've got no issue with repair and maintenance, and my property is like a show home. Nothing would go wrong with it because it is like that. So that's the reason why most people are now leaning to serviced accommodation for completely that obvious reason, because obviously if tenant moves into a house and the government is trying to change all these laws to make it so hard to evict tenants. So if you're doing a property as a service accommodation, you haven't got that problem. If your tenant overstay, then basically guess what, you're gonna send your cleaner in to ask them to leave because they haven't got any tenancy right. But here is where the figures looks really, really good. You see, when you're doing service accommodation, you've got your minimum amount you charge the tenants or the guests to pay you every single month. Okay, so in this property, basically we've got 3 tenants. We have 3 tenants, 3 guests paying you £150 per night. Suppose now this property sleeps, say, 6 people, and each additional person pays you £30. So you do here £30, £30, £30. So that gives you 1 people, 2nd person, 3rd person. That gives you the 6 people. So if you add all this up, you're talking about £240. Okay, £240 per night. That's how you get your occupancy rates to increase. It's not per day alone, but also per the number of people that are staying in the property at a time. You can even charge for a child, for example. So imagine now you're having that £240, you know, for say maybe 4 or 5 times a month. It pushes your occupancy rate, and you end up making a lot more money that way. And obviously you've got the long stayers as well that would pay you more money for staying there. So these are the benefits then you get from having a serviced accommodation. It increases your income. But suppose then now we know that we may, obviously if you know what you're doing, be renting the property over 45% occupancy rates. Let's go for mid-range. Let's say we only had 65% occupancy rate. At 65% occupancy rate, you're making £11,555 from one house. That is £8,339 more than renting it to a family. You see how you could make a lot of money from these things. You see how you can really become wealthy in investing in property, right? So this is why I love the service accommodation module, because it gives me more money in my coffers than renting it to tenant. When I rent it to a normal tenant, I can't be going asking them to pay more money. Even if I do, it has to be yearly basis, right? Go and ask them to increase it by 3% or 2%, but it's not that much compared to this. Let's not get in a bit more excited. Let's say we got it at 80% occupancy rate. You're talking about £16,893 in one single house. And here's the thing, you may be surprised. You may thinking this is impossible. It is not impossible. It is absolutely possible to make that much money in serviced accommodation. I will tell you that now. And actually, let me see if I can give you the last 2 years of one of my service accommodation property. So if I go here, okay, if I'm able to sign in, that is. So if I go back here, I sign in here. Okay, let me go to the analytics here. Let's see if I'm able to get the sales statistic. And this is just from one platform, by the way. My office don't like me doing this, but I just want to show you what month are we in. We are in August. So if I just say August here to now, okay, you can see here. How much can you see there? £44,027. Okay, that is your gross rental income from one platform. Right, from one single platform. Now you can see what I've just shared with you there is peanut. I just analyzed that based on worst case scenario. Okay, so, and that is just from one platform. If you imagine what this same property would make from different other platforms. So these are the ways you can see how your property would make a lot money for you and work a lot harder for you. So £16,000 in one house. It's crazy. And we bought this house for about £115,000. So basically it's a massive return on your investment. So don't forget to go into booking.com, review your rates, look what they're doing, compare what you're making as a rental income, as a family let, to the serviced accommodation module. You can see how much you're making there every year versus how much you're making here every year. At that rate. So at 80%, you're talking about £16,893. So these are the ways you can compare renting your property as a family and renting it as a serviced accommodation to make the decision on what way you want to go. So based on this analysis, I'm going to advise my investor to have a go at the serviced accommodation property strategy, because obviously that gives us better return, less hassle, and obviously it gives us peace of mind as well, not having problem with any of the tenants. I really hope this session has been helpful. If this has been helpful, go and smash it in the property world. I look forward to sharing the next one. Thank you.